Hey, guest Dave Blass and Sam Whitmer from the Roddenberry OTOY production of Unification today on Trekland Tuesdays Live, number 378. Can you believe it? Yes, right here coming to you from the heart of Trekland. It's Dr. Larry Nemecek, and the home, of course, of Trekland Treks, your unique, customized away mission. Anywhere in Southern California, we can get 4 location sites. I will plan it with you. I'll concierge you. It will be amazing. Get in touch with me. It's winter, but it's winter in SoCal. It's great touring time. Yes, it's another Tuesday for some sanity, clarity, and the big picture in all things Star Trek. It's an exciting day today because I think we have guests, and stay tuned because we're going to do a Prodigy Blu-ray giveaway. And all you have to do is be in the chat and do the keyword MURF, M-U-R-F. Just enter that in the chat window. When we get to the right time, we will give this little baby away. Can't wait for that. Yeah, it's a great holiday week, and let's plunge right in. I hope you all have seen, I don't know how you haven't, have you seen the Roddenberry Archive / OTOY production? It's actually not the first. They've done some, but it's the first in a couple years, and I think they needed to regroup because the scope of things was getting to the point where they really needed to be in sync with Paramount. But that has happened. It's been unleashed on the world for the last week or so. We talked about it last week when it was still hot, but I'm so thrilled today to have a couple of the very key people involved. So let me just bring them in right now. Boom. Dave Blass, the production designer, you all know from Picard Season 3. And Sam Witwer, who plays all the Kirks in this. We want to clarify all the Kirks. And Sam, I'm so thrilled to talk to you, and I hope we have a minute to talk about how you're booming it in Lower Decks and even your time as a Xindi Arboreal.
Oh, wow, that is a blast from the past. Yeah.
Well, that's what Dr. Trek is and Trekland's all about. But anyway, I'm so glad you guys could be with us. Let's just talk about who was involved for now. It's interesting because people are acting like this is like, oh, so new, and they'd actually been going down this experiment of CG and actual appliances and pulling all these different dots from the Star Trek universe together to tell some interesting kind of stories that are between the cracks, moments and things. So how did you both get involved with this one? And I mean, what's the origin story of it for you all?
You want to take that, Dave?
Yeah. When I was doing Picard, I had known Jules for years through several different things, but he had reached out to me and had mentioned about the Roddenberry Archives and would I like to be a part of that. And as we were wrapping up Picard and we had the Enterprise D and all these things, it's like we have all these things, and it's like, oh, well, yeah, that's something I'd love to be a part of in maintaining the history and the artistry and the behind the scenes knowledge of what, not only, what the show is, but how it got made and who did what, and making sure that, everything is maintained for future generations. So they brought me in on that, and I've helped them as an advisor for years. And it's like we did a piece where we put William Shatner back on the bridge of the Enterprise refit. So we built a replica of his old captain's chair that we put him in that, and I had that built. So we working with them, and again, it's just the idea of keeping Star Trek alive and making sure we maintain all of the history.
Right. Because the archive started as they just started digitizing assets to make them more accessible online, and this ongoing, and I'm sorry, I keep forgetting. 765874.
Yeah.
This is like what, the third chapter in this?
Fourth chapter, I believe.
Fourth,
yeah.
Okay.
And the key thing is with in today's world, so many of the props and things, they get used on the show and then they get sold off. And right. I get it. It makes total sense. It's a money making thing. But then they're gone. And what if you want to reference them, or what if you need to recreate them, or then there's no fan experience. But they're scanning all the stuff so that, and then in the worst case scenario, we can have a digital archive, and then in the future a digital museum where you can go and walk around and see all the props and look at them as they were.
Yeah. And I forgot to mention, everybody in the chat, welcome. If you're new to Trekland Tuesdays Live, some weeks I just have a topic, some weeks I have guests, but we always try to check in with the chat. We are only doing YouTube today, so I can do the giveaway later. So if you didn't hear up front, everybody type Murph into the chat, and you have to be a channel member. So if you're subscribed on my channel, do that, and then put Murph in the. In fact, if you're a subscriber, you have a twice as good a chance to win as everybody else does. But everybody put Murph in the chat. And we will get the chat in a minute. And again, a shout out to everybody who's a regular TTLer. We'll do our regular business at the end and all our thank yous. But if you're new, welcome, welcome. Let us know where you're coming from. Let everybody know. And just a reminder that if you're watching this later on YouTube, obviously the giveaway will be done. But feel free to leave your comments about everything, including Unification, later on. All right. Sam, hello. Man, this is like the first time. We've got a clear signal now, too. So congratulations on this. And again, I know the credit watchers know that you've been involved. You've done lower decks, some lower decks, including just recently, some incredible ones. And you even have time as a Zindi Arboreal back in the back in the Enterprise days under a lot of prosthetic. I know, but anyway.
Yeah. Two of my friends are Jim and Jason Vanover, and Jim Senior.
Yes.
Yeah, Jim Senior would invite me over to the art department, and I would just, there would be Mike and Denise and Doug Drexler and Jim, and I would just scat Star Trek music. So I just come in, I'd walk into the office and go, and I would scat it. I'd scat the Star Trek stuff, and they were very patient with me. And then I got an audition for Enterprise, which I totally blew, embarrassed myself. Went to the art department to tell them how badly I embarrassed myself, and then I saw a picture of the character I was supposed to play. I'm like, oh, I know how to do that. I didn't know I was doing that. And then I ran back up across the lot.
Oh, wow.
To Junie Lowry and Ron Surma's office and said, can I read it again? And they're like, okay. And then I did it much better. And they're like, oh, all right. Well, they were very nice. They were very patient with me.
That's amazing.
And then I got the role. I remember that Scott Bakula and those folks were, uncommonly kind and nice and fun. It's cool. I love watching, Dominic Keating and Connor Trenier on their podcast, because I got to encounter them briefly, and they were very charming and very sweet. It's great.
It's amazing how things have come around. But no, then you had these two great roles in the same episode, which I noted on my second opinion, on A Farewell to Farms. So you were the stoner, big-hearted Klingon not warrior who saves everybody in the end. Yeah. And then Sir Leg Dog, the snooty Koloakan food critic who has a secret to hide. Yeah. So congratulations on those. They were totally different, memorable, and people were like, oh, it's the same person.
Thank you. Yeah. Mike McMahon, he just really knows his stuff. And I'm a big fan of the show. So it was a thrill to do it.
Now, I know what a huge fan Dave is and has been. Is that your story too?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I think we're getting between the lines here.
Huge.
That's a big nerd. Big nerd.
So Dave was talking about his entree here. What was you to Unification?
God, mine is a long story. I'll see if I can distill it down to a little bit of time. But basically, I met the OTOY folks because I did a scan for a project called Callisto Protocol. Somehow Clay Sparks, who was running my scan, the hours we spent together, he just noted me in his head. He said, "This guy is a nerd," and I am. So
and hard to hide.
So then later, there was a project I did somewhere else. I can't talk about it NDA, but it was a successful project where we did something not quite what we're doing here, but in a similar world where I was consulting and helping and had my hands on a different performance. With a different thing that I can't talk about. Anyway, then I saw that extraordinary thing that Jules Urbach put up, where there's Spock, but he's in camera, and he's on the monitor, and they're clearly just kind of panning around on the set, and there's Spock, and so I just ignorantly sent Jules a DM. How are you doing this? This is from a fan. And he goes, "Oh, you're Sam Witwer. We're looking for you. We've been trying to get a hold of you. Like, we try to send you your reps." And then I'm like, "Okay, well, what's going on?" And then we got together, and we had a lot to offer each other. I had some technical expertise from that other job and some ideas. So I showed them what we did there. Broke my NDA. But it was all in good. It was all
overlapping NDAs.
Funny enough, a lot of the people that worked on that project came over to work on Unification. So did I break the NDA? Who knows? But I had to show Jules what we were doing if I was going to show him what I could do for him.
Yeah.
And then he said, "Also, we think you're Captain Kirk." And I'm like, what does that mean? I don't know. That doesn't make any sense to me. But thank you. I guess there's a time in every Star Trek fan's life where they think they're Captain Kirk, but I'm not Captain Kirk. I'm not Captain Kirk. And then later, one time I came to the office and he was showing me these pictures, and I'm like, "Oh, cool! Oh, look at that! Oh, is that interesting? There's Spock. There's Spock. Oh, here's Shatner from The Intruder, Roger Corman film. Extraordinary performance by Bill that he did before Star Trek, and he would wear these suits or a white suit and coiffed hair and all that." Except the Intruder was shot in black and white, and I'm seeing a still in color. I'm like, I didn't know that they had on-set photography of this quality back then. You know, how did you get this photo? He's like, "Oh, that's not the Intruder." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "That's you." And he took footage from something that I had done, and he monkeyed with it, and he made me into Captain Kirk. And he's like, "Let's try some stuff." So then, sorry, I know it's a long story, but eventually I saw that they had these extraordinary tools that they developed. You know, John Lee and all these folks, and Clay Sparks and Jules Urbach, and they had incredible, these digital prosthetics that they were messing with, and that they were live in camera and all this stuff. And for me, I guess, you know, they're like, "We think you're Captain Kirk." And I brought some technical expertise, and I kind of looked at it like, you guys have just invented, like the guy that invented a bicycle, right? You invented a bicycle, and I'm the guy next to you who goes, "I swear to God, I know how to ride that. Put me in, coach. Let's," you know. And so then Jules was extraordinarily generous, extraordinarily open. He says, "Okay, you're with the Roddenberry Archive now. You're with us. Figure out Captain Kirk." So we locked me and Clay in a room, and we just came up with mission objectives and tried to figure out how to recreate Kirk. And once we got good enough, then there was the big moment of truth, was approaching Shatner and saying, "What do you think?" Because if Shatner didn't think the idea was cool, all of that work was going to go away, because that's, you know, you have to get good at it to show Mr. Shatner that we can do something. But if he doesn't like it, well, this is all his. This is his character, you know. So we were very prepared to walk away from the whole thing. But thankfully, Bill was extremely generous and curious about the whole thing. So sorry, there's my long story.
I bet the curiosity would be in there too. So
I think that's the other thing, is that what Sam said that was so important was everyone was ready to walk away if the people weren't good with it. It's like, this was a celebration of these characters and the actors who portrayed them, not sitting here going, "Hey, look what we can do. We don't need you anymore." It's like, no, we will always need William Shatner. We will always need Leonard Nimoy. They're our goal. They're our baseline. They're our true north. And the thing was just to sit there and go, what can we tell parts of stories that didn't get told? And that was, it's like, can we right some wrongs and give some background to some things? And it wasn't about, let's go do more stuff and we don't need you anymore. It was, no, can we give the audience, give people like little moments of these characters that they would like to see again?
And and again, I'm sorry that my origin story with this is so long. You would be shocked if you knew how much detail I'm taking out. But in my initial, what's that?
I said, no, not really, but go ahead. I totally would understand. Yeah.
In my initial conversations with Jules and his team, I felt like as an actor, I had sort of a choice, right? And I was like, this is extraordinary what we can do now with prosthetics and digital prosthetics and all kinds of different methods. This is extraordinary. And I realized when I was seeing it, I'm like, it is here. It's here. The technology's arrived. Not everyone knows how to do it, and some people have different methodologies, but it's here. So one of the early discussions, and this discussion went on for 2 years, the discussion was, well, we have an opportunity to set the standard for how you do this correctly, and how you do this where the actors are front and center, where this is still Bill's character. There isn't a move that I'm making in that performance that Bill didn't tread
Mhm.
first, and that's important. This is not me going, I have a really cool idea for Captain Kirk. That's Chris Pine's job. That's Paul Wesley's job. My job as a member of the Roddenberry Archive is to give a rendition of the original pop culture icon.
To be archival.
Yeah, exactly. To think of Captain Kirk as a historical figure and approach it with that level of detail as if I was playing Winston Churchill and we were going to try to make me up to be Winston Churchill. I'd watch footage and study. The idea was, no, this is going to be me playing William Shatner playing Captain Kirk. And if we do this correctly, we will be making a statement to the industry that you can't do this without actors. You can't do it without people like Mr. Shatner feeling curious and being engaged, and you can't do it without an actor who is going to take the reins a little bit, because you can't treat this as a technical process. It's got to be an actor process.
Yeah. And also it's a collaborative, because people were mentioning like, oh, look at that AI hair. I'm like, no, that's hair. That's Sam's hair done by hair makeup people who do that. There was wardrobe people there. It was like they did archival recopies of everything was done by film people, except for makeup, which in other worlds would be done by special effects makeup people. So again, that's the thing. It's not people sitting there at the keyboard going, make this. It's another tool for filmmakers.
Now, having said that, we had plenty of people working at the keyboard. Plenty of people. We had makeup artists. We also had digital makeup artists. We had John Lee and his team, and there is extraordinary technical work being done. But when I say we didn't treat it as a technical process, we treated it as an actor process. It was because people like, I would be speaking with the tech team and they would tell me what it is that they need from me. I would tell them what I need from them. And we both merged our processes in an artistic way. And Jules was also, kind enough to make me a producer at the Roddenberry Archive, so that I had a certain level of authority to protect the character, which is something that Bill did over and over again on the set. What would Captain Kirk do and what would he not do? And ultimately, my ideas of what that is, that's just my interpretation of what Bill might have done. So obviously mine is a very, very distant second to his Captain Kirk. However, I needed to zealously protect it in the same way that Bill would protect it. So if someone wanted me to do something that I did not feel was Bill Shatner's Captain Kirk, I would be encouraged to politely refuse, because that's what you have to, you have to, and not refuse, but course correct and say, well, I know you want to do this. How about we do it like this, because this is what.
I think what was another thing.
I was going to say, Dave, real fast. It's that process is not unlike what I saw Dave Blass do for 2 or 3 years, bringing all the the new generation and also the recreations on Picard, and then obviously what this project required.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really blew my mind was watching Sam work, and it's hard for people to imagine this. So you're seeing two monitors side by side. One has Sam and one has Sam's version of Kirk, and you're seeing it in real time, because the process was done in real time. And Sam would have to kind of do something with his face that wasn't what you saw Kirk doing. He had to tweak it in a different way so that you would get that exact Kirkness out of the digital prosthetic. And it was something weird where he had to it was like watching himself in a mirror and learning, oh, if I want Kirk to do this, I have to do this. And
right. Yeah, so because
it was a digital prosthetic, but it would be the same as if you had a physical prosthetic.
Very much so.
And you're trying to get used to the latex. Or
exactly. You look in the mirror with the latex and you go, this looks funny, but this looks amazing, and this is, what I mean. You're learning all those things, but when it comes to learning how to work with features that are not yours, you do have to practice essentially in the mirror. And because it's a real-time process, you can practice in the mirror essentially, because you can see the real feed. And what you're doing is your brain starts rewiring and going, okay, no, those are my features. Those are okay. I know how this works. And it got to a point where we rehearsed enough over a long period of time that someone could call out, hey, there was that moment in Star Trek 4 when he says that Spock's guess is extraordinary. Give us a sense of that. And I could just think it And then we'd look at the screen and it would be that same expression. It's like, okay, all right, my brain is cracking it. My brain now believes those are my features.
That's your new muscle memory to do.
That's my new muscle memory, right? And so I did things on set that I would never do with my face if I was on a set with my very broody Cro-Magnon face. I was using Bill's very handsome features, and again would have to do things that probably looked a little bit silly to my fellow actors. Unfortunately, I remember apologizing to Robin Curtis and being like, "Look, this is going to look weird, but it's going to look great. It looks great over there. What I'm doing actually makes sense. So try to go with the feeling of what I'm giving you, but I hope I'm not too distracting." So,
well, can I jump back just a second, and Dave, maybe you could answer this. So I'm not totally living in the chat, but I did see this because I wanted to ask it anyway. So I'll let Carl here ask it. Can you explain? I mean, this is an amazing thing, and they've done a couple of chapters, but we watched the end credits, and there's an awful lot of shingles there at the end of the roll, including Paramount, and I know the Shatner and also Leonard's estate, Susan, his wife, widow, were involved. What is the legal? I mean, I don't know if it changed for this one because it was even more ambitious in their other projects, and you weren't involved with those, I don't think. But what's the legal? And then somebody said, what's the canonical? I mean, like, what's the mindset that on the legal side, and then as fans we take from this?
Yeah, I give my Dr. McCoy answer, which is I'm a designer, not a whatever. I'm not a lawyer. They tell me to do something pretty, I make it look pretty, and I make it this and that and dance around. It's a complicated process, and having worked on Star Trek, it's important to know that it is this behemoth of a thing, and that there's licensing in this, and there's a lot of amazing people. From like John Van Sitters and all those people who are out there navigating the waters of how this all happens, and everyone's trying to do something. So I can't speak intelligently as to what the is it canon? What I made a joke yesterday about the canon, and I did Shatner's canon from Arena. I said this is the only canon I know of, and then every fan's pointing out, well, actually in the cage there was a. I'm like, okay, I was making a joke, but yeah. So what is canon? I don't know, and I think everyone has their own points of view. From is the animated series canon? Is what? So I think when you can make thousands of people cry, to me that doesn't matter. It means that what we did was we touched people's souls and we did our job. So that I think for me that if that's the core value of Star Trek is connecting with the audience, then maybe it is canon.
Well, but let me back by legal. What I meant was hearing you both talk just now. It sounds like you're talking about having the cooperation and the understanding and the support of Shatner, of the Nimoy estate. But it sounds like you mentioned our friend John Van Sitters. It sounds like there weren't any. All of that legalese happened, and you guys really didn't have a lot of limits. It was like you were just up to your own limits. It sounds like there were no eggshells to have to walk on or boundaries. I mean,
there were guidelines. Jules made it clear what our boundaries were. There are a couple things that perhaps fans will see. Maybe, I don't know. We'll find out. We'll find out. There were things that we did or shot or wanted to do, but they were beyond the scope of our handshakes with everyone.
Oh, okay. I think it lands somewhere around the Rings of Power. It's like if you look at it, it kind of runs into like Rings of Power territory of what they can do with the token thing. It's like they're only supposed to do stuff that's in the footnotes of the token thing because they're certain characters and they can only do this. So all these things are getting very complicated, and again, I don't speak to it.
It's that fill in the cracks realm.
Yeah, and the same thing was true with Picard in season 1. They couldn't do certain things because there was the Star Trek films and there was the Star Trek TV series, and they were separate worlds, so you couldn't and that's why certain things were not done exactly. I believe the phasers were one of them. They couldn't replicate the phasers, and they made up something new. But it's always a challenge.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Strange New Worlds is bringing all these characters in on the younger end. So, I mean, I get that. But So Dave, we were talking, and we should talk now about how people have a lot of questions about this. What's the city? Why is Gary Mitchell in there? Why are they in the Section 31? I mean, all of that. Obviously there was
well. Here's the explanation for all of that. I can explain it to you very quickly and very concisely. It's exactly what you think it is, but different.
Yep, he's right.
Yeah. So it's like when I was watching, I was like,
"Yep,
yep," and that's what it is. And it's a journey into a realm that we may or may not understand, and we don't want to explain it to you because I don't know what happened. It's like, what happens after you die? I don't know, and maybe someone died, maybe no one did die. We know that both Kirk and Spock are no longer with us, but when does this take place? How does this take place? Here's a story. How do you feel in a very 2001 way? Go on the journey and see how it feels. Go with Spock into V'ger and see what he experiences and how it impacts him. That's what we're going on the journey with. It's like, we're sending you on a journey. We're not going to explain to you what the journey is. And I've had so many different people give their version of it. I'm like, I didn't.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'm like, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. And it's like, and the different one. And it's like, what I love is that it's connected with so many different people and brought a lot of people who have said, wow, this is the best Star Trek and this and that, because they look at it and they're connecting with it. And I'm like, okay, you just said something. If I say, you know what, that's not the actual way it's written, it ruins the experience. That's how they experienced it. So I want them to experience it the way they would. And if the end of it is, did they have that moment that we were all hoping for? Yeah. Then how you got there is really up to you.
Yeah. Yeah. In terms of Star Trek continuity, I will share something that I don't think is going to ruin anyone's experience. First of all, we did need to know the answers when we shot it, because I needed to know how
you had to be grounded with some kind of subtext.
Yeah. And we needed to figure out how to do that. And Carlos and I would have a lot of discussions over the storytelling priorities.
Carlos, our director here.
Carlos, the director, who threw so much heart and emotion into this, and but there is one thing that, again, this isn't any secret. I don't think this is going to hurt anyone's interpretation of the film. But I do love, me and Robin Curtis had a little talk, and I said, in presenting Sorak to Kirk, it's, this is a moment, because if Kirk hadn't made the sacrifices he did, and David hadn't made the sacrifices that he did, none of us are here, including, and you have no son, and there is no continuity for the family of Spock. And that was a really important moment for us, for me and Robin, when we talked about that. We talked about, that this is in some ways showing him that none of that was in vain, that those events had huge reverberation into the future.
Yeah. There's a shot at the end of Good Will Hunting when Ben Affleck walks up to the door and Matt Damon isn't there, and you watch his face, and he goes through 15 different emotions just on his face, and you're like, I'm so glad. Wait, he's not here. That makes me sad. Makes me happy. And that moment between Kirk and Saavik was done with two brilliant actors, one of which was covered in digital, but it was sitting there going, here's his emotion. Here's this moment. We could have a conversation and say words, but we don't need words, because you did it with face acting, and you said 15 pages of dialogue in half a second, because you're like, that's Spock's son. This happened. We know what happened, and now she's also with half a glance, but in her expression, it's like, you need to go on, because
there's someone waiting. There's a task ahead of you.
Yeah, and it's like, and whether he knows. But he's like, yeah, it continues. And just with that glance, you see him realize the gravitas of the situation.
Yeah, in a way, and there was something very reassuring about that, that David is still here, that you didn't lose your son, because look what's happening around you, and this is a gift that David gave us. You know, it was a really beautiful moment, and to distill it down, like Dave says, into a few moments, was definitely challenging, but hey, we had the time. We were gonna.
Well, and I think that a lot of that is Jules and Carlos had such a great vision for it, and then it was like to bring in Robin Curtis to do all these things was just so important for this journey. And everyone, you know, other people have said, well, why wasn't McCoy there? And it's like, well, yeah, why wasn't everyone there? Why wasn't, you know, it's like it's like you can't put every, you know, topping on a burger and still have it, you know, it's gonna be.
You have to pick and choose. Right. It had to be a Spock centric thing, and Robin was absolutely lovely, and her performance speaks for itself. It's just she just nailed those.
And I she's such a wonderful person too. I've gotten to know her over the last year or so between Ticonderoga and convention, and it's just one of my favorite people in the world.
Oh, terrific. Yeah. And I was, again, you know, for me, I was a kid watching these movies. I was a huge fan of her specifically. Her Saavik was the first Saavik that I saw ever. So never thought I'd be here. Never thought I'd be describing the moment where she's presenting her son.
Her son. Well, that's really... aside from people being blown away by the execution and all the facets, people did come up. We were kind of quasi laughing, quasi saying, "Why is Gary Mitchell here? What, you know? Why is Yeoman Colt in this still? Was it?" And a lot of people, there was always the lore of the cut lines from Star Trek 4, where they talk about Saavik being pregnant from Star Trek 3, but it was never on screen. And I think it's been explored by some of the so a lot of people just weren't up to speed with that, and it's been so long now they weren't even aware of the licensed book reference. It's there to play with it. So obviously, I mean, is there? I was trying to remember if there was a credited writer. Was this just like a joint production? Like somebody's making? Is it Jules? I haven't had a chance to talk to
Jules. Jules is the guy who came up with
to say, let's go have Saavik be pregnant and have this had a son, and the son's an adult now, and yada yada.
Yeah, Jules and Dave, please chime in here. Jules created the thrust of the story. Carlos, you know, our script on this was really a visual script. He created an animatic, you know, very Lucasfilm, because Carlos and I are both, that's where we come from, Star Wars. He created this wonderful animatic that kept changing, you know, being altered. And then it was all about, when we arrived on set, it was all about learning what the specific moments meant. And in fact, one of the things that Carlos and I arrived at the same exact time, which was, we had a big laugh about this. We wrote mock dialogue, and Carlos wrote mock dialogue. He wrote, actually, he would hand me pages, and each look was a certain line. And then I'd go over, but what if we change this line to this line? Well, we're talking about looks, right? But I'm, you know, this and that. And we, you know, we would refer to, for example, we would refer to, because Carlos wrote this, he wrote lines for a scene, for that end scene for Spock, right? And we would refer to the moment where, you know, there was this one line, and I'm like, well, and Larry's standing next to me, and I'm like, and I obviously, me and Larry were both like, well, this line, he's going to raise his eyebrow. This is the moment. And so we always referred to that moment as the joke, because I remember, you know, I remember saying to Carlos, I'm like, humor was such a huge part of Star Trek, of the relationship between Kirk and Spock, and the relationship between Shatner and Nimoy. I mean, listen to the commentary on Star Trek 4. They're just riffing the whole time, cracking each other up, right? So it was very important that there would be a moment of humor and levity when they were reunited. And so we called it, you know, the joke. And so let's try the joke again. Okay, let's go, you know, all right, we can hit the joke in this way. And, you know, I think Carlos brought so much heart to it, and he did a fantastic job with all that. And all of us, you know, I think Carlos brought, I don't want to speak for him because he brought a lot of his own personal experience into this. And I think we all did. Dave, I'm sure you did, you know? And I was thinking a lot about Ken Mitchell, you know, another Star Trek connection, you know? because Ken was aware that we were working on this, and I was consulting with him and telling him about it. And so, you know, it's one of the reasons why we won't explain what all of the little images mean, because it's such a personal story that everyone, the audience, needs to own it. The audience needs to say, I think it means this, and that has to be the truth.
Yeah, because as soon as you take away their story, then you're saying, no, this is, and it's like, no, whatever got you to that place where you're literally, I shared it in one of the commentators, just the tear rolling down, and he's like, okay, you got me. And it's like, well, how did we get you there? You took yourself there. We took you here. You took yourself the last 5 miles to get you to where you're crying, because that's your personal story. And that's what's important. And what I loved about what Carlos did was he came to, and he's not a Star Trek fan, he's much like Nicholas Myers, didn't know it, but he was so smart to do the other thing, which is go, Dave, I don't know shit about shit. That's why you're here. Make sure I don't, how do we do this? We're going to do this. How do I do it? What pieces should be by the bedside? That tells us what pieces should be in the room. Why are they there? What's important? Yeah. Okay, great. And then moving on. And it's like, so he's like, yeah, you tell me what's important to your world, and then we'll focus. You know, he knew emotionally. I mean, there's the shot where Sam at the end, they take their hands, which is a callback to the motion picture. But at the end, he has, I think, Spock put his other hand on top, basically closing the circle, which is to sit there and go, we're now together again. And it's like, we're together. And it's like, boom, boom, boom. And it's like, that tells the story of bringing this whole thing. And that was on him, because he's like sitting there, or the combination of these guys. It's like playing these moments, but it's the history of Star Trek that is brought together in these very personal moments. And I think that for me, that's really, you know, how we deal with death is at least as important as how we deal with life. And all these people who are our age, who are crying over this, going, they've dealt with that. All of a sudden, they've had to deal with a parent, a loved one, or something, and they're now connecting that last moment. I wish we had that last moment. And also, these two characters didn't have that moment. In Wrath of Khan, they're separated by the glass, so it's like the hands touching, and then this way they're touching again. It's like, okay, they have this last moment, and they know the gravitas of the moment. I just think it's a life. It's a beautiful thing, and for fans to see that and let the fans have that moment, but really the fans are crying because the characters are having that moment, and that they realize that actually did happen. So
and it cannot be understated how much we are standing on the shoulders of giants. It cannot be understated, because we are, all of the work that Shatner and Nimoy and all of them did is informing on the moment that we created. You know, I mean, we cannot thank them enough for what they've done and what they gave us as fans. And so the entire intention here is to honor them and to try to reunite fans with some old friends. That we took it very, very seriously. And you know, and also, Dave, I stole part of the set.
Fair.
I took some of it home with me, so I'm not kidding. I have a Vulcan, one of those.
The pyramids, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which we're very canonical.
But yeah, I mean, again, there was, I can say this because I was on the set of the Enterprise D when the cast walked on to experience that, and I've had some amazing moments. I mean, as a kid, I started out on this journey saying, I'm going to go to Hollywood and I'm going to go work on Star Trek, and everyone thought I was a fucking idiot, and excuse my French. And my guidance counselor was like, shouldn't you be more realistic? And I'm like, no, it's Star Trek. That's a fantasy show. I think I need to be, that. But when I started out on this journey back in 1984 to do this, there were only 3 people had ever done it. So to sit there and say, oh, I'm going to go do this, it's a stupid idea. But to be able to do this, and not only not at the end of the journey, hopefully it continues, but to be able to bring these 2 franchises back and give them these 2 moments of closure is such a gift. But there's such a reverence there. And the same thing I did with the Enterprise D and with Liz, we wanted to be authentic, and because we realized what we were doing and how it would connect with fans, and there's a amount of respect that we said we have to do this. If we're going to do it, it has to be right. And what Sam and everyone in that room did, and Larry with their performances, like, this is not us creating this thing. This is us explaining and creating a version of this thing. But it's like I was able to have Herman Zimmerman come in and to the set. I go, this is your set. I didn't do it. I just recreated it to give this gift to fans. And I'm giving, it's the same as Sam did with Mr. Shatner. It's like, this is you. We're just giving you this gift and giving it back to the fans.
That is, yes, the intent. As we said, you want to do something new with Kirk, ask Chris Pine or Paul Wesley. That's their job. Yeah. My job is to embody Shatner's version of that character, full stop, and treat that character like he lived and breathed, and he was a historical figure, because in many ways he was. He was there throughout the civil rights movement, and he sabotaged the takes. As he's kissing Nichelle Nichols, beautiful Nichelle Nichols, and he sabotaged the version where they didn't kiss and crossed his eyes so that they would be forced to air him and Nichelle Nichols kissing, and that character was there through, the Cold War and Vietnam and all these historical events. You have to treat him like he was real, because he was. He influenced all of us. He was in all of our lives.
And to a very real thing, he is real. And it's like, people see that, and it's like that version of Kirk. And it's like, there's no disrespect to Paul and Chris Pine. They're amazing with what they do. But for people looking at it, it's like, and especially for me, the moment that so is when you do that as young Kirk, and you do the turnaround look, and I'm like, oh my God, that was just like,
been waiting my whole life to do the turnaround.
It's like, I remember, having this discussion with the director on Picard, and they had people at the console, and they're like, oh, well, we can't have them looking away with whatever. We got to put another console over here. I go, no, they just do the thing where they're doing the console, and then they turn around and deliver the thing. It's like, then it's like the urgency. It's like, you don't need to see the thing on the screen. It's like, it's right along, Captain, to do the thing. And then it's like, you do the face acting, and that tells the story.
It's right. You create dramatic moments. You may as well put glasses on all of them so they could just tear the glasses off and say, Captain,
Yeah.
The meteor or something,
It's like, what's up? Oh, blah, blah, blah. I go, where's the drama there? It's like, you got to do the Star Trek turn.
I will tell you, as an occasional leading actor myself, you're always looking for the moment to turn. It really helps. There was, it's funny. It's you're reminding me of an SNL joke where it was some actor, and they're like, welcome to Handsome Acting School. We'll teach you the handsome acting turn. And just like this, anyway. And then who was better? Who could possibly have done the handsome turn better than Bill Shatner? There is no better. He is the prototype. But and
populated a whole later generation of Facebook of memes and
Yeah.
But
the thing is that it's what I think is so wonderful about that old show is that it's a theater piece. There weren't that many visual effects. There was just wonderful stories and dialogue and thought-provoking morality plays and actors that were just killing it, who were playing for the back row. And they were playing for the back row because they knew that the format was a TV screen about this big. The screen itself was about this big. Fuzzy as all hell. Maybe it's black and white. Maybe it's a really primitive color. Picture's terrible. One little mono speaker about this big. How do you make big moments with that? Well, you better go for it. You better play to the back row. You better use all of your theater skills and all of your tools to create dramatic moments that are going to punch through all of that fuzz. They never conceived. Now then you go forward in time, and when Shatner and Nimoy know that their faces are 2 stories tall on a movie screen, they modulate their performances accordingly, because they're like, well, we don't need to punch through. Now it's we bring it down, we make it very subtle. But back in the original series, it was, how do you get the point across? That's the format. How do you act to effect when the format was, by our standards, so primitive? They never imagined we would be watching the original series on big giant screens, So it's...
And 50 years later.
And 50 years later. I mean, it's It's an extraordinary achievement, that show. I love it, love it, love it. I watch it all the time. And I watch Star Trek. I watch all kinds of Star Trek. I'm a big fan, of all of it.
Getting that idea. It's not exactly. So Dave, I know this is an enigma tale, and we get to the crux of it, the climax. The point is to have the reunification of the unification. But some of those early and I know it's whatever you want to make of it, like Gary mentioned, like and the alien city, which I said reminds me of a matte painting from TNG they would reuse a lot, only from the side. But what reminded me of Picard was, Colt, but she's in the Section 31 museum, the archive,
or she has access to that data.
Okay.
So, I mean, again, how?
And I guess we're dealing with different times and dimensions because Colt is of her century and
but we also then introduce Yor, who is a time traveler, and then brings in, that whole thing of, is this time travel? Is this, and then we're dealing with, in order to send Kirk from one universe to another universe timeline thing, it's a whole different Megillah. So there's a lot of things in work. And then also it's throwing out there another thing, which is, where are we? What is this place? And why are we there? Well, we know that when Picard died, that his body was sent to Section 31. And then in Picard, when they go to Section 31, they walk by a vault, and it has the remains of Captain James T. Kirk, which then implies that, they went to the planet and took his
Viridian 3.
Viridian
3. And brought his body back, and they do science on it, to maintain it, to whatever. So the DNA exists to do something with it, similar to what they did with Picard. Is that what they did? I don't know. I wasn't there. I asked Colt. But that's sitting there letting you know that, because Shatner famously did a book where they did this whole thing, and they went back and got him and brought him back to life and did that whole thing. So it's like, and we know, like, I remember getting a lot of flack for that scene in Picard. People like, you're grave robbing this. And it's like, Shatner did it himself. He did this exact thing in his book because, it was fun, didn't land with everyone. It's like, okay, that's not really the way that, it's cool and all, but whatever. So it's letting people know, it's like the body's there, and we know that, there are all those possibilities, as Spock says. And there you go. So
and I'll call him. I need to call Ron and ask him what kind of residual energy readings happens in a body when they visit the Nexus. It's very important to know what that does.
Yeah,
because that was always my. Look. Speaking of interpretation, that was my interpretation when I saw Picard. I'm like, they're studying his body because it was altered by the Nexus. There's something going on with it, and they need to know. They it's a temporal Nexus. So it kind of exists it's floating through space in a ribbon, but it also kind of exists everywhere all at once. So yes, they need to study what's going on with Kirk's remains.
And also if you think about it, just in terms of you go nerd on it, it's like, okay, so Kirk went into the Nexus, but what happened with his physical body in the time period when he left the Enterprise B? And so he physically went into that Nexus, and then he physically came out of the Nexus, and so there's a whole thing of it. It's like, let's not explain it.
I'm so thrilled to remember that the 24th century folks have no clue about what the Nexus is, so I don't feel bad sitting here in the 20th. It's the formless shape. It's the biggest. It's maddening, but then it's also, liberating to be so formless with no parameters. What about Guinan? What about Saran? Somebody the other day said, well, what did happen to Saran when he, is he off having his, nothing?
Yeah, he's great. We saw him go in there, so he's fine. He's good.
But it's one of the things that's always driven people, me included, crazy about get your arms around the Nexus. What was it? And people say, well, it was a weak story device for Ron and Brandon to use in the end, and blah blah blah. But then this is almost, now I've not thought about this. It's almost turned it on its head. No, it's not the weakest link here. It's awesome. You can, as a storytelling vehicle, you can go on and as this.
Yeah, well, we actually tried. We thought about in season 2 of Picard playing around with that, because when we see Picard's chateau and there's the different versions of it in his brain and everything, whether we go with the Nexus version and whatever. So, but yeah, they got a little deeper than some folks wanted to go.
Yeah. Well, listen, let me ask one more thing. So what's been your feelings since it was out? I mean, you worked on it all this time. It's finally out. Basically universal acclaim. People are crying, melting down. And some people are like so confused. Maybe they don't enjoy. But what's been the biggest surprise for you both at the reaction?
The biggest surprise for me
Hopefully,
is that
unexpected. You said you're getting explanations that you hadn't considered before. Like, okay, well, that's something.
The biggest surprise is
gratifying. Anything. The
biggest surprise is that we did it at all. It's ridiculous that we did this. I mean, we should, by no stretch of any kind of logic or temporal nexus, imaginatory energy, should we have ever attempted to do something like this. And yet Mr. Shatner was curious and intrigued by it. Jules had a vision for it that he fought for. Carlos had a vision for it, and then I just got to be stubborn, and somehow we seem to have embodied that moment. I'm still scratching my, me and the sound designer guy mixed this, David Collins, and again did an extraordinary job. I love the fact that, first of all, I love his work throughout the whole thing. David Collins, I've worked with for 17 years, started working with him on Star Wars years ago, dear friend of mine. And by the way, if you're a Star Trek fan, check out the Soundtrack Show. Look up the podcast, The Soundtrack Show. He does some extraordinary episodes on how they produced the music for the original series. It will blow your mind. Dave, have you heard these?
I haven't, no.
Oh my God, the Soundtrack Show. I'm telling you right now. And I loved that David came in and he put the Enterprise, the old girl, 1701, no bloody A, B, C, or D, into the movie. Because when you see TOS Kirk, you hear the Enterprise behind him. I just, and all of this, it's just a fan's dream come true. On what planet, on what reality do I ever get to play a version of Captain Kirk? That doesn't make any damn sense to me, let alone in something that Shatner executive produced and that he gave us the trust to do. None of it makes sense to me. I remember watching the piece and I've spent 2 years worrying about this, right? Worrying, is this going to work, or will I have betrayed my own fan base of Trek, my fellow Trek fans? Will I have betrayed them and betrayed Mr. Shatner's trust and all this stuff? And only when we saw people crying and reacting did I allow myself to feel the emotional enormity of having portrayed, my childhood hero. It's something special there. That it hit me hard when it did, because I'd never thought of it for 2 years. It didn't even occur to me. All that occurred to me was, we got to get it right. How do we make this better? How do we make this more authentic? How do we make it more Bill? How do I master his mannerisms, his face? What would Bill have done? Am I qualified to do this? All of those things. That's been where my head.
How does the new interface work of human actor as a tool?
And that was for me one of the first things, because I have a little bit bigger of a reach of Star Trek fans on social media, and one of the first things I'm like pointing the finger at, this is Sam. This is not, because there's a lot of terms that people throw out, deep fake and it's just AI, and it's like, sure, there's AI algorithms that work in so much of what we're doing, probably in this video that we're doing, but it's not hitting a button. It's not hitting anything. It's a performance based.
It's not making any choices.
Yeah, it's like it's not bringing the heart to it. It's like, so there was so much of a performance based, and Sam was such an integral part that it would have been impossible to do this. And again, that's why it had the heart that it did. It was done by actors who were acting and bringing the heart. And again, I can't say enough about Robin Kurtz. Look at that performance. It's like that one scene with them, just with those looks. It says 15 pages of dialogue, and again, that's you wouldn't get that with the AI. You see all these little AI shorts of Harry Potter and as a hillbilly, and it's like, okay, that's cute, but it's like it has no emotion. It's just a gag. It's a gimmick, and we're not at the point where they're creating stories and emotion, and that's what this is. It's using new technology to create new stories, but with heart, done by people who are artists.
Yeah,
and and to put a little bit of a little punctuation mark, Mr. Shatner on some talk show re-performed the "Oh my" moment the way that he wished he had done it.
Yes, it's out there. Yeah,
which was so useful for what we were doing with the last shots of this, because I could see I got to channel this. This is it right here. It's a different moment. It's slightly different, but it's very much the same. Mine, he smiles a little bit more than perhaps what he did on that show, but in the eyes and the feeling, I just watched that clip over and over again. How is he doing this? Okay, that's what I want to bring to this last moment when he looks at the sunset, when he turns and you get that profile of him looking at the sunset, because it's important to all of us that Bill be felt in this performance. It is his character. He did this. He's the one that crafted this character over years. He's the one who knows it better than anyone. So he had to, in a spiritual sense, he had to show up. So, and I'm so grateful to him for his patience with this whole process.
So there's an interesting. I'm not even catching up with the chat, and I usually don't, or I do it all together. But when there's guests, we try to do this. But so Cake is Eternal just said, "Can Sam please do some ASMR recordings, audiobook, Starfleet
Sure.
computer?"
You ready? Here it goes. Warp core breach imminent. Evacuate the ship. How's that? Is that good? Is that the ship's computer would not be successful if that was the voice? That red alert. No.
Well, isn't canon, Dave, that they've always used a female voice because it's supposedly, which is what real life, the research is that a female voice cuts through the chaos and the noise.
The chaos, yeah.
And there's only the mirror universe has male.
No, there you go. I didn't know that. Yeah.
Right. That's right.
Yep. Guys, listen, this has been incredible and awesome, and it's still an enigmatic 8 minutes without a lot of hard and fast questions, but it's like the Mona Lisa. Then, everybody takes away from a piece of art what's intentional. And I guess maybe in 20 years, all the working subtext that was, like when you said those emotions, those knowing looks were 20 pages of dialogue. It's still right now.
Not 20 pages.
Blank.
Okay, well, someone explained to me the when you come out of the voyage home, why is there grass and why are we coming out of the water and and I'm like, what is that?
When they time travel,
I'm like, yeah, exactly. So it's like, okay, why are we doing that? I had Leah Thompson, who did the time travel episode in Picard, ask me this. She's like, what does that mean? I go, yeah. Find out, let me know. I don't know. I'm like, I've never seen someone say, here's why we're in the grass and what that means. It's like, no clue.
I loved it. Voyage Home was the one that hooked me. That one, because I knew Kirk and Spock and stuff like that, but I grew up really engaged with Star Wars. And then when I went to see Voyage Home, it's like the light bulb went on and I'm like, I've got to watch it all. And then I was just obsessed with both Star Wars and Star Trek.
Oh, here's the difference. That's why there's two of them. Yeah.
Well, but that's the thing. Sam did that journey. A lot of people haven't, and a lot of people are trying to do Star Trek and it's like Star Trek. It works because of the science and because of the things, and it's tied to a reality in a different thing. It's like
Star Wars is more Greek mythology. Star Trek is science fiction and classical literature. But I'll just say this: we have stolen. I mean, those two franchises constantly trade aspects with each other all the time. I mean, you better believe that when we were developing the character of Darth Maul, for Clone Wars, we were having whole discussions, me and Dave Filoni, about Khan. So yeah, they help each other, these two franchises. I mean, hell, they were gonna, hey, let's see what we can do about making Star Trek Phase 2, and then there's this weird movie that comes out over at Fox by some 30-year-old dude with glasses and a beard called George Lucas, and suddenly Paramount's like, wait a second, could this? We need to make a movie. We need to make and people like John Dykstra worked on both, and and then hell, I mean, George Lucas's Industrial Light and Magic did Wrath of Khan, and I mean, there's a lot of mutual help.
But
so
George,
I'm trying to heal the wounds between our two peoples, because I am of both houses.
Well, I never thought that. I always thought the whole war was a clickbait thing anyway. I never knew anybody that.
Yeah, and it's a clickbait. It totally is. It's totally.
But I was just saying, George Lucas wouldn't have got his last bit of financing had the world not suddenly turned around and Star Trek blew up the first wave, like the conventions getting the news, and
or for example,
and the tech manual being on the New York Times #1 bestseller for 16 weeks, and so there is some money in this old girl after all. Okay, then it's not
There's no Millennium Falcon without the Enterprise.
Yeah.
Because before then it was just rocket ships and flying saucers. That's all you get. I mean, I can't imagine. I wish I could go back in time, in the 60s, in the time of rocket ships, flying saucers, and pulp magazines, and then turn on the television and see the Enterprise. I mean, that must have blown people's minds. I sort of take it for granted because I grew up with the Enterprise. But the Enterprise, man, can you imagine? I mean, you guys can, right?
The Enterprise makes no sense if you think about it in terms of a design, but it like when you look about it, and again, the Matt Jeffries, I'm just like, okay, yeah, I can, but it's just the idea. It's like, oh, it's a flying saucer, but with the thing, and it's just there's a level of brilliance that it can't be appreciated.
Well, but that's Gene telling him, I don't want fins. I don't want it to look like it has to obey aerodynamic laws.
It's a creature of space.
And they didn't even have the idea of subspace and the bubble and all of that worked out yet. But they just knew it needed to not look atmospheric.
Yeah. Well, it's like Sam was mentioning earlier about the talk going a little bit over the top to project out of the TV. I watched at the City on the Edge of Forever with a live audience at the Skirball Center a couple of years ago, and the audience was cracking up, and I'm like, at parts that weren't funny, just because the acting was over the top, and I'm like, and it's always like, oh my God, it's so over the top. I go, no, it's so awesome because that's what it was, and it's like you can't really, and I think that's something that we do nowadays is we look at things from the past in our lens of this is what it should be, and it's like, no, that's what it was, and that's what made it awesome.
I will say this. I never discourage people. It's like, if someone wants to laugh at, I don't like sand, it's rough, it's coarse, and it gets everywhere. People want to laugh. That humor seems to break the tension to get right back into what's badass about it, right? So I always, when I'm introducing people to TOS, if they have a chuckle, I encourage it. I'm like, yeah, have fun with it. But also, look what they're doing. Look what they're doing. Look how original this show is. And look at this. This show was happening during the Civil Rights Movement. And look what they're doing. Like they were tackling, during the Cold War. And they're talking about it right now. Look what they're doing, and they're so good.
They had to explain what sci-fi, and because it'd been bug-eyed monsters.
That's right.
On film. Nobody had taken it seriously. They had to ground it in reality. And that's where the believability factor.
That's right. And then, as far as the performance, again, it's always going to be different because we as people, our vocal patterns change, over time. And so, they're already going to be seeing people doing what feels like old-timey speech, the sort of the mid-Atlantic thing, and, that sort of performance style. But the thing is that also is a great stand-in for how we may speak in the future. You know what I mean? It takes you to a different place, and you get to exist in that world. And that original show is still extraordinarily effective at creating that world for you and creating those characters in those situations. And so, yes, the bigger moments, sure, have a chuckle, but understand what you're seeing. What you're seeing is them trying to punch through a screen this big. What you're seeing is he is trying to get an idea out to an audience who may be, I don't know, reading a newspaper, and You know, there's a reason why when something happens, you hear dun 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 dun, because the TV itself is trying to say, hey, pay attention, there's something happening here. And so they're playing it to that audience with that format, with that fuzzy screen and stuff like that. That's what that is crafted for. Now, we have the extraordinary privilege of seeing exactly what they did on these big screen TVs that we have in high def, and seeing that Mr. Spock's skin was actually sort of green a little bit. We never really saw that before. And we're seeing like all these details that we were never really meant to see, but you see that, my God, they crafted these details with no hope that anyone would ever see them, but they did it anyway because they cared. They did all of those things because they cared. And those actors, producers, writers, crew, they cared about what they were doing, you know? So
yeah. And it took a toll. It took a toll and yeah,
huge
on them to get to that. My other caveat to people is to say, look at what else is okay. People say, oh, it's so dated. Can we just look at what else was on at the time? Like, look at the rest of most of TV from 66, 69.
Very consistent in terms of the feel, or not the feel, but very consistent in terms of the performances. That's where the performances were at the time. But we don't know that because we're not watching those shows because they didn't survive like Star Trek. That's why we don't know.
That's just the reason that they didn't. Yeah.
They're like, oh my God, why did they act like that? Be like, all shows were like that to a certain extent. It's just that you're not watching them because they weren't as good as this. They didn't create a phenomenon. They didn't launch us in an aspirational way toward looking to the future and getting ambitious about this. And, you know, I mean, my God, when Rod was doing his documentary about his father, I think it's significant that George Lucas said, yes, come to the ranch. Let's talk about your dad. George, as a Star Trek fan, let's be very clear. George is a Star Trek fan. You know, Han Solo doesn't say, you know, it'll take a few more moments to get the coordinates from the Navi computer traveling through hyperspace. They like Justin Crops, boy. He doesn't say that without Captain Kirk saying, warp 1, Mr. Sulu. He doesn't.
Yeah. Guys, I should let you go, and I'm going to do a giveaway here in a second. But thank you for jumping in. This is an amazing. I think a lot of people. I think everybody enjoyed the execution and the power and the quality and the craft and people. But I think after that washed over and people had their tears, there were a lot of questions, and I almost feel like we got to the next level a little bit here today. Not to and talking about the process is amazing, and the role that both of you obviously played with that. But just going a little bit deeper here about the because I don't know if you've noticed or not, but Star Trek is notorious for people wanting everything tied down because that's the nature of the beast. And so to come in with an enigmatic, and that's kind of me too, I'll be honest. But the attitude about the enigma and the letting the audience make its own interpretations is because we know where it gets to. The end game is Kirk and Spock having their moment together. In whatever reality that took to get it done, but
it's a challenge. And again, for me, I just want the audience to have the moment, and then. But if we tell them how it is, if it in some way, if it's going to screw up things, it's like, oh, here's how it is, and here's the science behind exactly why it happened. It's like this isn't that film. This is an emotional journey for two characters that we all love. Done by people who love the characters, and we're all doing it for the characters and the actors. So I think that the science behind it has been thought through. We have our ideas of what it is, but we want the audience to just enjoy it.
And also, we took great pleasure in including nods to all of Star Trek. You know, this is a situation where it's unification, man. You know, we like Star Trek, and yours right there front and center, and we have the picture from Star Trek Beyond, and we have untold number of details, a few of which the audience has not picked up on yet. But this is about all of Star Trek. This is not about any one little bit.
Just the original. We keep overlooking your Days of Yore. I keep wanting to call it. He needs his own series. It could be called.
Gordon would be very happy about that. That'd be great.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks guys so much. I'm sure there'll be a lot of ripple effects and people will be talking for a good while. But until then, thanks so much for jumping on today. And everybody have a good holiday this week. And we will catch you later.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. And we will get on with drawing for this little bit. Thank you, guys. We didn't dip into the chat a whole lot, but we're going to give away this baby. It's the Season 2 Prodigy Blu-ray set. Okay, has everybody had a chance to get your Murph in and or get subscribed? Because I'm going to do it. All righty, I'm going to hit the button, gang. We've already reviewed the Prodigy Season 2 disc. So it's just we live in an era when you just want to have physical media. We've already seen the streaming channels up and down and sideways and be hinky with material. And if certainly Prodigy leaving Paramount Plus and thankfully being picked up on Nickelodeon. And the gap in not having a season 3 is not to be despaired. The Hagemans were my open house guest this year. Aaron, Walke, all the folks powers that be say that the door has not closed on a season 3, as wild as that sounds. There's so much restructuring going on in the industry right now anyway. Okay, here we're going to hit the button and see who's going to get it. It's going to come directly from the distributor too, so I'll need to collect the address from the winner. All righty? Here we go. Choose a winner. Oh, it's Michael Grafe. Grief? So one of my longtime folks has got it. Yay, Michael, you still with us here? Are you here? There it is. And there you are. Okay, Michael, so email me or DM me or whatever and get me your address. And I will get that over to, you know what, gang? You know what? I don't know when this is going to happen. And I get the idea that I actually have 2 of these to give away. Let's just do the second one right now. I mean, it's the end of the year. I don't have an event planned for a while. It's going to come straight from them. If I don't use it in the next month or 2, I might lose it, right? Let's do a second one. Everybody in? Everybody in. Okay. Haha. This will teach everybody to make sure you're subscribed and make sure you've typed Murph into the chat. Okay, I think everybody with us so far is in. Yes, a number 2. Okay, here we go. Choose a winner. Frank, are you still here? Hey, yay. Gotcha. Okay. So, Frank, I need your address, and we will get one of these little suckers going your way too. Okay. Thanks to Michael. Thanks to Frank for being here. Congratulations. Big thanks to Dave, and big thanks to Sam, who I'd not had the pleasure to meet before we talked virtually here. So I look forward to doing that in person. And just a quick reminder as we close out today that the other people I want to thank is all of our Patreon folk. Yay. So I hadn't had a chance to thank them yet. So yes, thank you to Chuck A., James Kerwin, Diana Hopkins, Jesse at Crusher Convo, Lawrence Todd, Hal, not 9,000, just Hal, Glinda Bruton, Andrew Jazimski, Mitch Keith, Josh Pratton, Pranakasha Productions, Chris Jiggins, Keith Rombach, and Comedy Forecast. Community is your brother, right? No. And our live wires, especially our live wires, Greg Wickstrom, Robert McLean, Byron Bailey, J.R. Poole, Gary Williams, James Durvage, Dave Gregory, Dan Leckie, and Casey Shafsky. Thank you. Big time for you guys as always. Again, you can join, but here's the thing right now. Join us at the website, patreon.com/Trekland Live. $5, $10 a bucks. If you even think about using the app, and especially if you're on Mac, don't use the app because you'll get charged a fee. Just come to the website and join us in Patreon. And you could do more than 5 or 10, but that's the standard. I want to thank everybody so much. The Patreon's been getting a little bigger. I don't really push it big time. What I am going to push big time this week, though, is be looking. We're going to have a Black Friday, Small Business Saturday, Cyber Monday special, the big special about jumping into the portal at 2 different price points, huge bonuses. It's going to be awesome. I'll be telling our news list. If you're not on my news list, jump on there at LarryNemecek.com. But be looking. If you're thinking about you wanted to finally get in the portal and you wanted a good discount, the one of the 2 times we do this in the year, we do it at open house and we do it for the holidays, a huge discount off. You basically get 6 months for the price of 5 or 10 for the price of 12 for the price of 10, but there's also bonuses that come with it too. Some cool things, including holidays, Gene Roddenberry's very last 1990 Christmas note card that would go out with all the orders to Lincoln Enterprises order people from 1990, which is kind of cool. I have a ever diminishing supply of those, and some other cool stuff, some swag and some other things. If you jump in right now in the little gift box. All right, you'll be seeing more about that, but it starts this weekend. So jump in for that. You'll be seeing that. Also, yes, I know it's a Tuesday. Where's the Trek Files? Well, the Trek Files is on hiatus. We'll be back with season 13 in mid-December, we'll say. So until then, you can jump over at thetrekfiles.com, our page on Memory Alpha. And now they're all easy. You can scroll. Not until the last year, it's been easy to find all of our wonderful past episodes, including folks that have passed on, like Dorothy Fontana, talking about specific, the 15, 20 minute. Sometimes we stretch to 30 if we've got amazing guests. We can't stop talking. But they're bite-sized pieces of Star Trek history with real folks who made it, the real folks who knew them, the real folks. That's why I love doing the Trek Files for Roddenberry. And there'll be some news coming out about the Trek Files in the coming year. Can't wait to share that with everybody. Overall, you want to follow me, it's YouTube first. I hope everybody subscribed if you weren't already today for the drawings. But make sure you like and subscribe and share the YouTube. Please do. And meanwhile, I am on Blue Sky. Still a fraction of the Twitter folk count, but I am on Blue Sky now and Twitter. And it's just Larry Nemecek. Same thing as Instagram. Same thing as YouTube. Instagram and Facebook are still, if that's your thing of choice, Larry's Trekland. And of course, portal47.net. Be watching for the special, but you can check it out and see exactly what the backstage pass is. The solution to post-con blues all year long, every month. And I know we've got some Portales here in the chat today. So I guess I'm saying stay healthy. Do all the things, right? Stay woke. Check the sources like never before. Having some AI on a known actor playing a known character, that's one thing. So yay, Sam. Having it presented as truth without any background or selectively, or what's being buried and kept from you, that's another thing entirely. We got to work on that. Yeah. Check the sources. And as you go about your business this week, enjoying your loved ones, hopefully, or finding your new family, your found family, or your old family, just Trek well, everybody.